This video is going to demonstrate how to write a radical expression in simplest form. It's a good skill to have because there's times in math class when you would like to get an exact answer instead of plugging it into your calculator and getting an approximate answer. And square roots are one such instance where exact answers are needed sometimes, decimal answers are okay sometimes. I hope you remember what a square root is. It is an operation that will tell you what number times itself gives you a certain number. And I hope you remember how to take the square root of some numbers already. For example, if we had the square root of 9, I'm hoping that before I write the answer, in your mind you're thinking, hey, that's 3. Or if I took the square root of 36, that answer's 6. Or if I took the square root of 100, that answer is 10, because 10 times 10 gives you 100. So it's important to remember those numbers that are perfect squares. If you take the square root of it, you get a nice answer. So we're going to make a perfect square list. And here's our perfect square list. 1 times 1 is 1, so 1 is a perfect square. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 is a perfect square. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 4 is 16. 5 times 5 is 25. 6 times 6 is 36. 7 times 7 is 49. 8 times 8 is 64. 9 times 9 is 81. 10 times 10 is 100. We can keep going if we want. 121, 144. I think that's probably about where I'll stop. But again, I could keep going. The reason I want to make a perfect square list is because these numbers in this list are going to help me write numbers in simplest radical form. Let's try to simplify each one of these radical expressions. And here's our plan. We are going to choose a number from our perfect square list, which are those numbers in red, and we want to pick numbers that divide evenly into the number under the radical symbol. So let's take a look at example number 1. Radical 12. So I'm going to look at my list. 12 is not in my list. So I need to think of two numbers that will divide evenly into 12. The first one that comes to my mind is 6 times 2. But I'm not going to use 6 or 2 because 6 and 2 are not in my list. So a number that's in my list would be 4 times 3. So I am going to rewrite the square root of 12 as the square root of 4, and that's the number that comes from my list, times the square root of 3. 4 times 3 is 12, so that means the square root of 4 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 12. I can take the square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is nice regular 2. So if I take a regular 2 times a radical 3, I get an answer of 2 radical 3. And that is the answer in simplest radical form. Let's do the same thing for the square root of 18. I can think, hey, 6 times 3 gives me 18. And it is, but 6 and 3 are not in my list, so I can't use 6 and 3. I have to use one of the numbers has to be in my list. So 9, square root of 9 times the square root of 2. 9 times 2 gives you 18, so square root of 9 times square root of 2 gives you square root of 18. I can take the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is nice regular 3. So if I take a regular 3 times a radical 2, just write them next to each other. I have 3 radical 2. So that is the simplified version of square root of 18. Let's try number 3. There's nothing wrong if I have a number that comes before the expression in square root symbols. This is going to be 4 times. 75 is not in my list, so I have to think of a number in my list that divides evenly into 75. And if we think in terms of money, hopefully 25 comes to mind. So I can rewrite the square root of 75 as the square root of 25 times the square root of 3. 25 times 3 is 75, so the square root of 25 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 75. Now let's try to simplify this. I can take the square root of 25 It is nice, regular 5. So if I take 4 times 5, that's going to give me 20, and then I still have to multiply it by this radical 3, so 20 radical 3 is my final answer. And notice that wasn't any harder than example 1 or 2, I just had that extra number out in front. Now, the main thing that I don't want you to forget how to do is I don't want you to forget how to simplify a number if it's a perfect square. And take a look at number 4, 7 radical 36. Believe it or not, a problem like this are some of the most missed problems on quizzes and tests. Here's the 7. Square root of 36. If I take a look at my list, hey, 36 is in the list. It's right here. That means I can take the square root of 36. The square root of 36 is just nice, regular 6. I didn't have to do any work. So my answer for this problem is 7 times 6, which is 42. Please do not miss the easy problems because it involves a number that's already in your perfect square list.